My name's Daniel Foster, and until last winter, I never believed people when they said a single night could reshape the rest of your life. I used to think fear was just adrenaline, nerves, imagination running wild. I used to laugh at ghost stories, true crime videos, all that stuff. But that was before something knocked on my door at 2 a.m. Something that knew my name, even though I lived alone. Even though no one knew where I had moved. I guess the best place to start is this. Last year, I went through a brutal breakup. 7 years together. Then she just walked out. I didn't even fight her. I was too drained. I packed a bag, grabbed my dog, and drove 8 hours north to settle into a tiny rental house tucked deep in the woods outside Blue Junction, Oregon. Population, maybe 1,000, if that. The place was cheap, quiet, and came with old wooden floors that creaked even when you weren't walking on them. I didn't care. I just needed to breathe somewhere that didn't remind me of her. For the first week, things were calm. Too calm. Every morning, trees, fog, silence. Every night, pitch black darkness. No street lights. No neighbors within shouting distance. But on the 12th night, everything changed. It started around 1:40 a.m. I woke up gasping, like something had just yanked me out of a dream I couldn't remember. My room felt colder than usual, and my dog, Milo, was sitting upright on the bed, staring at the bedroom door. Not growling, just frozen. His ears straight up, his body locked. I whispered, "What is it, buddy?" But the second I spoke, he whimpered and crawled under the blanket. That's when I heard it. A soft tapping. Not loud, not frantic, but deliberate. Tap, 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 coming from the front door. At first I thought I imagined it. Maybe a branch, maybe raccoons. I checked my phone. 2 a.m. on the dot. Then, another set of taps, but slightly louder. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't random, it wasn't nature, it was a knock, a real knock. But I hesitated. Nobody knew me here. No one had my address. UPS didn't deliver at 2 a.m. Cops don't knock politely. And if it were an emergency, they wouldn't be tapping. They'd be pounding. I slipped out of bed quietly, trying not to make noise. Every instinct in me screamed, "Don't answer it." I stepped into the living room. The house was completely dark. The only light came from the moon through the window, and the tapping continued. Slow, patient, like whoever, or whatever, was out there. Knew I was listening. I grabbed the nearest thing resembling a weapon, a metal flashlight, and walked toward the door. I didn't open it. I didn't speak. I just stood there, staring through the peephole. Nothing. Just my empty porch, the yard, the dark tree line. No person. No movement. But the moment I leaned in closer, a voice whispered from the other side of the door. Soft, slow whisper. "Daniel?" I froze. My blood turned ice. My legs literally shook. Nobody here knew my name. The whisper came again. Only this time. Closer. Slow whisper. "Daniel, open the door." I stepped back instinctively. The voice wasn't angry. It wasn't threatening. It sounded wrong. Like someone trying to imitate a human whisper, but getting the rhythm slightly off. Like a recording being played just a little too slow. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart was beating so hard that I could hear it echoing in my skull. Then the voice said something that made every hair on my body stand up. Closer whisper. "I know you're standing there." I stumbled backward. Something scraped lightly against the bottom of the door. Slow, dragging, almost like fingernails. That sound. God, there's nothing in the world that prepares you for a sound like that. Milo barked from the bedroom, but immediately went silent again like he'd been muted. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but the screen froze. Completely. It wouldn't respond, wouldn't unlock. Nothing. Just a frozen clock at 2 a.m. And then, the knocking changed. It became faster. Harder. Tap, 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 tap. Not fists. Something thinner. Bonier. I shouted, "Who the hell is out there?" And the knocking stopped. Instantly. Like someone clicked pause. The silence that followed was so thick I felt like I was drowning in it. Then, in the softest whisper I've ever heard, barely audible through the wood, faint, childlike whisper. "Daniel, let me in. It's cold." Those words, the way they were said, like a child trying to sound innocent. I took another step back. "No," I said. "Get away from my house." Silence. Then a different voice spoke. Same whisper, but deeper. Not the same tone. Not the same rhythm. Deeper whisper. "Why are you scared?" Another voice layered on top of it. Same whisper, but higher pitched. High-pitched whisper. "We just want to see you." I backed into the wall. My breathing got rapid. Shallow. It wasn't one person. There were multiple voices, all whispering in that same strange, broken way. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. And then the bottom of the front door began to bend inward, like something was pressing its weight against it. Just a little, but enough to see the wood flex. My fight or flight kicked in. I grabbed Milo, ran to the back bedroom, locked myself inside, and pushed a dresser against the door. I crouched behind the bed, holding Milo's shaking body against my chest. For a moment, there was total silence. Then, bang, the front door slammed open. Not broken, just opened. Like someone turned the knob. I covered my mouth so I wouldn't scream. Light footsteps, absolutely quiet, but distinct, crept inside. They were slow, exploratory. They weren't boots, weren't shoes. Bare feet. But not heavy. Light. Almost weightless. Like whatever was walking wasn't entirely solid. I could hear them moving through the living room, then the hallway. Then something spoke again, from inside my house. So close it felt like it was right outside the bedroom. Close whisper. "Daniel." I was shaking so hard the bed frame rattled. Milo whimpered. Then I heard it. A sniffing sound, like someone dragging air through their nose, smelling the air outside my door. It moved right to the dresser I pushed against it. The sniffing stopped. Silence. Then the whisper again. Menacing whisper. "You're in there." My whole body went numb. My phone suddenly unfroze. It blinked. Screen lit up. Time, 2:31 a.m. Instantly, I dialed 911. The ringing barely lasted 1 second before all the footsteps inside my house stopped. The entire house fell silent. A dispatcher answered. 911, what's your emergency? But I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't dare make a sound. Then, faintly, the bare feet started moving again, but they weren't approaching my room. They were walking slowly back toward the living room, toward the front door. And then, silence. Not footsteps leaving. Not the door closing. Just nothing. I whispered to the dispatcher. Someone broke into my house. They knew my name. They tried to get into my room. Police were already on their way. When they arrived, they found my front door wide open. But there were no footprints. In the snow on the porch. None inside the house. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints. No tracks. like nothing had been there at all. But they were wrong, because right near the front door, carved faintly into the wood, were words, shallow, thin, scratched in with something sharp. "We found you." I moved out the next morning, and I will never, ever live anywhere alone again. But the worst part, last week, at 2 a.m. sharp, in my new apartment building downtown, someone knocked on my door. 3 slow taps. Tap, 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 and a whisper followed. Soft, broken. Final whisper. "Daniel."
My name's Evan Cole. And if you'd told me a year ago that a simple knock on a front door could destroy someone's life, I probably would have laughed. I wasn't the paranoid type. I wasn't scared of the dark. I wasn't the kind of person who jumped at shadows or thought every creak in an old house was a ghost. But everything changed on January 14th, the night someone, or something, knocked on my door at 2 a.m. and whispered my name. I guess I should start by explaining why I was even awake at that hour. I'm a paramedic. Night shifts are normal for me. Coming home at 1:30 or 2 a.m. isn't weird at all. But that night, everything felt wrong the moment I pulled into my driveway. The neighborhood I lived in, Willow Bend, was usually calm, quiet. A bunch of single-story homes from the 70s, lots of old trees, yards that hadn't been trimmed since the early 2000s. But around 1:45 a.m., the whole street felt dead. Not quiet, not peaceful. Dead. No wind, no rustling leaves, no distant cars. Even the neighborhood dogs, the ones that bark at anything, were silent. I remember stepping out of my car and seeing my breath hang in the air longer than it should have. Like the cold was heavier than usual, like the night was holding its breath. I hurried inside, locked the door behind me, and threw my keys on the table. My German shepherd, Riley, usually greeted me, but she didn't come running. "Riley?" I called out. Nothing. She wasn't sick. She wasn't old. She always came to see me. I found her lying under my desk, shaking, not twitching, not nervous. Shaking. I kneeled down. "What is it, girl? What's wrong?" She wouldn't look at the front door. That should have been my first warning. I microwaved leftover pasta, sat down on the couch, and tried to relax. But the silence in the house felt unnatural. My ears almost rang from how quiet everything was. Even the refrigerator hum sounded muted. At exactly 2 a.m., the digital clock on my stove flashed. And then came the knock. A soft, slow, deliberate knock. Knock, knock, knock. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. No one knocks on anyone's door at 2 a.m. in my neighborhood, not even neighbors who need help. They call, they text. And the knock wasn't frantic, like someone in trouble. It was calm, confident, patient. I sat there for a moment, listening. Riley crawled deeper under the desk and whimpered. I set my food down and stood up slowly. Every step toward the front door felt like walking toward a cliff edge. The knocking happened again. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't speak, didn't ask who it was. Something in my gut already knew. I wasn't going to like the answer. I reached the door and looked through the peephole. Nobody. Just my empty porch. The dying porch light illuminating nothing but the wooden steps and the walkway leading to the street. I leaned in closer, and a voice whispered on the other side of the door. Eerie whisper. "Evan." My blood ran cold. I stumbled backward so fast I slammed into the wall. "Who's there?" I shouted. The voice didn't respond right away. It waited, like it wanted to savor the moment. Then, softly, almost gently, soft whisper. "Open the door." I stepped back farther. "No, leave, now." Silence. Then fingertips, unmistakably fingertips, dragged down the door. Slow, long, deliberate. Scratch. Riley started barking, a panicked, violent bark I'd never heard from her before, and then immediately yelped like someone had stepped on her tail. I rushed to her, but she wouldn't come out from under the desk. She was pinned against the wall, shaking. I grabbed my phone. No signal. Not one bar, not SOS, just no service. Something that hadn't happened in that house once in 3 years. The scratching stopped. Then came the whisper again, but this time it was lower, slower, almost playful. Slower, playful whisper. "I can hear you breathing." I pressed my back against the kitchen counter. My hands were trembling so hard I nearly dropped the phone. "Leave!" I shouted. "I'm calling the police!" The voice answered instantly, like it expected that. Confident whisper. "No, you're not." A chill ran down my spine so violently I almost collapsed. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear movement. I just knew there was something standing right outside my door, something that wasn't human, or if it was, it wasn't normal. The porch light flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed the front door, and then the doorknob twitched. Not turned, not rattled. TWITCHED, like a muscle spasm, like something testing it, trying to understand how it worked. "No," I whispered without thinking. "No, no, no." The knob twitched again, harder, then began to turn, painfully slow, like whatever was doing it didn't fully understand the motion. I grabbed the nearest heavy object, a cast.